Good afternoon and happy new month. Welcome to another conversation with the Chiromo Hospital Group, Wednesday edition. And today I'm really excited to be talking about one of my favorite topics, which is self care. I'm even more excited to be joined by a stellar lineup of panelists, some of whom took part in this conversation during our live Mindful Mondays Twitter conversation, and some who are new. So, allow me to get into it, and I'll begin by introducing my panelists. And just giving this honor to the only gentleman here in today. We have Sergeant David Mushia, who I have an honor of knowing and interacting with. He is an addiction professional, ICAP 2, and a mental health advocate. David, welcome to the panel today. Thank you, David. Next on the line, we have Wanjiko. Wanjiko, thank you so much for joining us today and for participating in our Mindful Mondays. So, Wanjiko is the lead and founder at Integrated Living. She is also a teacher, a spiritual companion, and a holistic healer. Wow, I can't wait just to hear from Wanjiko today. And I'm just wondering who a spiritual companion is. So we are all here to learn from each other today. Next on the panel, we also have Lucy Miner. Hi, Lucy. Welcome to the panel. Lucy is a medical lab scientist at Moranga University Technology. She is also a fitness and fashion model and a fitness enthusiast among young women. Really excited to have you in this panel today, and I can't wait. I can't wait to hear from you. Last but not least, we have Eunice Kiama. Eunice Kiama is a nurse practitioner at Chiromo Hospital Group. She is also a mental health advocate, a woman in her own right, and an enthusiast in creating awareness where mental health is concerned. And Eunice, I'm really happy to have you in this panel today. And I'm looking forward to learning more from you. Okay. My dear panelists, if I have forgotten something about you, please feel free to mention it as we continue into this conversation. So, what is self care? I think over the past 2 years, now more than ever, we've been hearing the word mental health and self care, alongside each other. Self care, self care, self care, self care. And I want to start by there, by just defining what is self care to you, Wanjiko. What is self care to you?
Thank you, Gadoni. Self-care to me is the intentional, conscious decisions, words, and action that an individual takes for their nourishment, growth, and flourishing of their entire being. And when I talk about entire being, I mean their mental wellness, their emotional wellness, their spiritual wellness, their social wellness, and their physical wellness. Yeah. Mm.
Thank you, Wanjiko, for that. Absolutely, and I love the intentional part of it. Lucy, what are your thoughts on basically like what self care is?
Okay, thank you, Gadoni. So, according to me, self care is like taking care of yourself mentally, it can be physically, it can also be spiritually, and most importantly, you can be able to take care of yourself with or without the help of a healthcare provider. So that's self-care to me.
Something that you are able to do, on your own, not necessarily with a guidance of a healthcare provider. All right. Okay, so we've had intentionality there. We've had
Definitely.
yourself, not necessarily with a healthcare provider. David, just allow me to use this opportunity to poke you as a man. Like, what does self-care mean to you guys, to men? Please unmute. I can't hear you. We still can't hear you at all. David, we are not able to hear you. Is it from my side? Maybe Wanjiko and Lucy. Is it just me?
No, I can't hear him as well.
All right. David, unfortunately, we are not able to get you at all. And he's dropped out, but I'm sure he'll be joining us as we continue with the conversation today. Thank you so much, Lucy and Wanjiko. Why is this important? Why is it important for us to talk about self-care, to emphasize on self-care, and ultimately practice self-care? Why is this important? Yeah. Your thoughts, Wanjiko?
Um, Self care is important because it's for me. It means that an individual is awakened or they are going through an awakening of themselves. So that means they're aware of who they are, they're aware of the different parts that form themselves, and they're also aware of the needs of these different parts. And they're in a journey to seek how to meet the needs of these different parts. So the five parts that I talked about, your mental health, your emotional health, your social health, your spiritual health, and your physical health. You're aware, and then you're seeking how to be healthy in all these spaces. Yeah, that's why self-care is important, because if we're discussing it, if we're having this conversation, it means either you're already awakened to this reality, or this is an awakening moment for you.
Let's talk about this awakening. You've just reminded me, because initially I spent around 2 or 3 years in a rehabilitation center, and there's this thing that we used to call a spiritual awakening. You've just reminded me of that when you talked about awakening. So for people who are going to join this conversation as we go on, or anybody who will find this conversation later and they are wondering, I'm sure, what exactly is this awakening? What would you tell us, Wanjiku?
Yes, thank you. So for me, awakening is actually awakening from slumber, literally, because this need to take care of yourself, these needs that you have in all these areas of your life have always been there. The resources that are present for you have always been there. But if you're not aware, if you do not know, if you that's why we talk about the awakening, that your eyes, like not just your physical eyes, but you become awakened either by being taught, by hearing, by being in spaces where people are talking about it, a raising of an awareness, by somebody telling you about these things, and you're like, that's why I feel like this. That's why I need this. Then you're curious, and then you start to learn and to engage. That is what an awakening is.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for clarifying that. So is this self-care awakening the same as the spiritual awakening? Is it one and the same thing?
Awakening is an awakening. The only thing is that it happens in different areas of your life, and spiritual self-care is one of the areas of your life. So self-care is a big, family tree, but under it we have mental care, we have emotional care, we have spiritual care, we have social care, we have physical care. So you can be awakened in any of these areas. Yes, and for each of these areas the awakening looks different. the searching, the needs are different. So the way you search, the way those needs are met is also very different. Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that, Wanjiku. Lucy, why is this conversation important? Why is the practice of self care important from where you stand as a fitness enthusiast? I think Lucy has disappeared, but we have David back.
Yes, can you
David,
hear me now?
fantastic. Yes, loud and
Oh, good.
clear.
Sorry for that. I was having a problem with the browser, but I'm ready to go. So, why is the self-care this topic important? Yeah, as you were defining self-care earlier, I'll say that there are those practice or act or of taking an active role in protecting one's own well-being and happiness. And basically it's like the same way that we even do to our electronic gadgets. You know, when you overuse your electronic gadgets, it gets to a point where they even start to hang, the way we say hang. So you have to restart. So people like approach healthcare because as a human being, we need to relieve the daily pressures. Uh, we need to like recharge so that we can maintain the productivity in all our areas of work. So I think this is very important, especially even for us men, because unfortunately most of us as men take self-care as a leisure and not a priority. That is one of our challenge that we have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David, for that, and also thank you for highlighting that. Um, Also, where men are concerned, this looks more like leisurely activity, but in real essence, just from the analogy that David has very well reminded us, when you overuse your gadgets, they hang, and when they hang, then you have to reboot them, restart them. Or in the case of when your phone is about to die and you need to plug it back in, or even when you overuse your computer and at some point, it needs to update the softwares that in the system for it to be able to perform optimally. It's not any different, if at all. In any case, it should be more of a priority for us as human beings, because our parts cannot be replaced, whereas you can replace some parts here and there for gadgets. For human beings, that might not necessarily be the case. So it's taking that active role. And also Wanjiko was able just to bring to our attention, it's for even us to get to that point, there has to be some sort of awakening where you just come, bringing to your forefront, to your awareness, that these are the needs that I have, and then how do I address these needs? Where do I start? How do I remain consistent, in that, to contribute to your overall well-being? Lucy, you're here. Why is this important, from where you sit? Why is self-care as a conversation, as a practice, important? Please unmute.
Okay, it is important for us and even as an individual to practice self-care, because sometimes people think that when we're taking care of ourselves, we are being selfish. But on the other hand, when you're practicing self-care, you are able to be mindful of other people because you are at peace with yourself, you have no stress, you have no anxiety with yourself. So you are able to, it's like you're able to transform that impact to other people. So practicing self-care is being selfish to yourself, you're being mindful to others.
I like that. And I like that. And you've literally just taken it off my head, because the next thing that I wanted to ask, what are the myths that are surrounding self care? And that's actually one of it, where a lot of people would feel like Self-care is more of, being selfish, rather than it being paramount to our overall well-being, and paramount also in terms of how we impact the people around us. You can't give what you don't have. Yeah, unless you're able to replenish yourself, then you can be a better version of yourself, and even to the people who are around us. And talking about people who are around us, we have Eunice with us, who is um, a nurse at Chiromo Hospital Group. Why is self care important from where you sit, Eunice? I think Eunice, her internet is interneting still. Yeah. Wanjiko had mentioned, Wanjiko, when you're talking about defining self care and telling us why self care is important, I like that you brought into the picture that there are different facets of self care, and and the three basically under self care. Yeah. So please kindly just take us through these areas of self care, and if possible, just give us an example of one each. Yeah.
Thank you, Gadoni. Maybe I can just pick up also from where Lucy had talked. The question that he asked about the myths, and she had said that for most people, when they look at self care, they think you're being selfish. Uh, but really, self care is and should be a part of your continuous life. Taking care of yourself, ensuring that you're healthy, being aware, and continuing to learn how to care for yourself should be part of life. It should not be something that is seen as, oh, you're doing something extra. But unfortunately, because of the spaces that we have grown up in and the culture and society, has been removed and put as this is self care and this is you. But really, it should be one and the same. To the question that you asked me about the facets of self care, for me, when I look at self care, I look at five things. I look at at your spiritual health, your mental health, your emotional health, your social health, and your physical health. And when I look at your spiritual health, I'm looking at the beliefs and values that guide you. So practices for this, for some people would be prayers, for other people would be meditation and maybe silence. When I look at your mental health care, is looking really at your physical mind, your intellectual abilities, and the health that relates around that. So that means an awareness of if you're ill or not ill, or um, if you have an illness or not. But also, generally, to take care of your mind is to continuously make a commitment to learn. Okay. So that even if you're ill or not ill, you're building yourself up. When we talk about emotions, it's just again an awareness of your knowledge of your feelings and what to do with them, how to harness them, and how to use them for good. When we look at the social wellness, it's how you relate with other human beings and the environment that is around you. How can you be an authentic self so that when you go outside with other people, they're not determining who you are, but when you go there, you know who you are. So when you interact with them, you're a healthy self and you're able to create a community around you that is genuine and authentic. And lastly, when we talk about physical health, really it's taking care of every part of your physical body, the food that you're eating, the way that you're sleeping, your sexual health care, all these things that surround your physical body, taking care of them. That is the physical self-care part. That's what I would say for the five of them.
Right, absolutely. Thank you so much, Eunice, for bringing that to our attention. Sorry, Wanjiko. Hi to the little one. And why this is important for me is because in a lot of the conversations that I've had, be it in my capacity as work or even giving a talk, whether it's a church or in a school, there is the connotation that self-care is just one thing. So you'll hear more often than not somebody saying, I slept the whole weekend, that was self-care, or I went and did my nails, that's self-care. But you are not truly practicing self care or playing an active role in self care if you don't consider that you are made up of different pieces of the puzzle. You're not just one thing as a human being, and trying to identify the needs that you have socially, psychologically, and emotionally, physically, spiritually, and addressing those things, then you're going to end up living part of you drained. Yeah, and remember that we said we can't give what we don't have. But let me ask Lucy and Eunice, are there other areas of self-care that you think that we should add to the five that are also important in the overall well-being of an individual? Lucy, is there another area of self-care that you'd like to add into the five? Go ahead and unmute.
I wouldn't I don't think there are other aspects of self-care, but I think something to do with the psychology of the person, that would be a form of self-care. Like other people decide to improve their psychological idea by journaling or even meditation. I think there's a relation between the spiritual awakening.
Thank you, absolutely, Lucy. And I'm with you there. Once we are able to realize, specifically in terms of like thoughts and the impact that our thoughts have on how we feel and our actions and our behavior, then also just being, taking into awareness that you need to be in charge. You need to identify what is going through my mind, what is preoccupying my mind. um, what can I do about it? How can I change that? How can I counteract that, so that my overall well-being or the quality of my life is changed? Then I think absolutely that's an area that we can add into the self-care types. Thank you, Lucy, for that. Eunice, I don't know if you're able to hear us. Hi, Eunice. Could you please unmute? I think that's still frozen. David. Oh, she's here. Okay. Eunice, go ahead. Well, it's okay. Unfortunately, yeah, I think the digital space can be quite tricky. Yeah. Yeah. So, David, anything that you would like to add onto the now six areas of self care? Anything else you'd like to add that you feel is important, that we need to incorporate? David, can you hear me? All right, David
Yes,
is
I'm here.
okay. Go ahead.
Yes, I don't know whether I got Wanjiko was able to capture the issue to do with the environmental self-care. Like you need to live in a good place, so you need to take care of your environment, yeah, like breathe in a fresh air. And then also there is the aspect of financial self-care, that a person is able to manage their personal finances so that they don't get into unnecessary strains or financial constraints. So maybe that's what I can add for now. I don't know whether it was able to be captured among the cluster that Wanjiko has just shared.
Thank you, David, for that. And absolutely. And I'm really trying to emphasize here that self care is not just one thing. There are so many pieces. Um, of the puzzle that consists that life of that one person, and they are all important and we cannot neglect others. So yes, looking at the environment, in fact, clinically speaking, the environment that you are in currently, even whether it's your office, your bedroom, really can tell a lot about your state of mind. It can tell a lot once you just enter and look at what is surrounding an individual. It can really tell you even how that person feels about either themselves or the environment they are in. Financial, we can't forget about finances. Of all the stressors, finances is at the top of the list. It's at the top of the list in the number one serious contributors of stress in this country for the youth, around the world. So if we get to a space where we are able to recognize the impact that it has on our lives and what can we do about it in terms of safeguarding ourselves, whether it's developing healthy habits, a healthy relationship between you and money, whether it's developing saving ways to be able to save, whether it's saving for a rainy day where you have something put, or just investing in terms of investing on yourself, whether it's medical or insurance, or even an investment in terms of professional and education. So that's really important. Finances are really um, their core, and being able to take care of yourself, and even just psychologically being in sync with um, how money affects us and affects our well-being would be really, really important. I like to joke that people who if you look at the characteristics of individuals who've been employed and their behavior towards end month, mid month, yeah, it's really different. You delay that salary by 1 week. Let's say people are supposed to be paid on 26th, and then this time around they get paid on 6th. The level of anxiety that those people will be shaking, will be experiencing is unfathomable. So we can't ignore the fact that finances really do impact. I also came across another study that was saying, looking at family relationships and couple, that finances in relation to family breaking was higher than infidelity. Yeah, can you imagine that? So finances do really play a big part. And I want to add, in terms of self-care, professional self-care. Yeah, for some individuals, education will also fall in there. So you are intentionally, yeah, taking care of yourself. You are actively minding yourself. If you also recognize that I'm in school right now, of this age, and I need to do what I need to do now, to maintain me being in school. Or I am working, and as I'm working, what is it that I can do to enhance my skills, to grow? Remember, the definition of mental health actually says that overall well-being of an individual, where that person is able to be fruitful and productive. Yeah, it's one of the key things, being fruitful and productive. So also looking at your professional life, are you able to be, do you feel fruitful, do you feel productive at the end of the day? What is it that you can do about that? And that will fall under professional self-care. That's where growth comes in. That's where being a better version of yourself. So all these things are really important, and I'm so glad that we are having this life-changing conversation today. The lack thereof for some individual can lead to burnout. Guys, let me start with Lucy. Allow me to start with Lucy. What's the relationship between burnout and self-care?
I can simply say that, okay, let me give an example. Like, I'm a medical student, and most of the time we face a lot of pressure at school, because you find that from Monday to Friday you have lessons and you have practicals. So when the weekend comes in, you don't have the time even to relax because you're just pressurized with the assignments and even maybe the exams that are coming up. So you don't have the time to even like take a nap and sleep. Just take your books and you start doing anything else. So you experience that burnout because you are not taking time to relax and even to unleash the anxiety or even the stress. So when you don't take care of yourself or when we don't like take time to relax, we face that burnout. Yeah.
Thank you. Absolutely. I mean, being able to take time is quite important. It's paramount. And if you don't do that, then you do suffer burnout. What are your thoughts in regards to burnout and self-care, David? Sergeant David, forgive me. Yes.
No problem. It's okay, Gadoni.
Uh-huh.
So thank you very much. So burnout may occur when we have the difficult in finding the necessary boundary in order to manage the personal life and also the work demand, because either you are working or you're a student, so you have to balance the personal life and what you are doing in your area of life. So when there is not that you are not able to define that boundary, then there bound to be a burnout. And of course, it will be manifested through physical, emotional, or mental exhaustion. And this will lead to decreasing motivation. You find that you are no longer interested in what you are doing, and also lowered performance. So you'll not be at the peak of your performance. So when you're talking about self-care, the self-care, the deed, the actions that you're going to do so that you can achieve this self-care will help you uh, to maintain that productivity by, in a way of, you are restarting, you are rejuvenating yourself so that you're able to perform in your area of work, in your area of life. So burnout is self-care can be one of the best way or one of the best strategy to prevent or even help people in burnout, out of burnout. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Absolutely. That exhaustion leading to that loss of interest that initially one used to have. And if you're watching this conversation and you are at a point where you're wondering, am I suffering a burnout or not? The website, the Chiroma Hospital Group website, www.chiromahospitalgroup.co.ke, we are going to put that link, has an assessment that is absolutely confidential and anonymous that will give you instant results. And you can even sign up if you'd like to be getting tips on some of those things. So the assessment on burnout, if you want to assess yourself, is there. We will attach that link next, or rather, next to this conversation that we are having here today. Eunice, welcome. I can see you moving, so I'm happy that you're here with us. You found us halfway. So before I even go into the comments that we have received from our social media pages, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome Eunice to say something to us. And if you'd like to comment on burnout from your um, clinical perspective, please feel free to do so. Welcome, Eunice. Please unmute.
Thank you, Gadoni, for this chance. I'm very sorry about my network. It was very poor. Uh, I'll comment much, just a little on burnout and self-care and how they are related. When it comes to burnout, is that state of exhaustion, emotionally, physically, and you find that this burnout, the exhaustion, the emotional and physical exhaustion can be caused by stress or maybe physical work that can be so hard, where someone is so hard on themselves. And now, when you practice self care, this really help you uh, especially in your productivity, how you relate with others. Because when you're emotionally drained, it also affects how you relate with other people around your circle, and also how you carry on your daily to daily activities, even at your workplace or at home. And self care takes a very good role to help you cope and manage the whole situation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Eunice. I'm really glad that you are able to join us in this conversation. We are receiving some comments from our social media platforms, and we're going to display that shortly as I read through. We have a comment from Carolina Wamboi. I agree with Gadoni. Finances really play a big role in one's mental health, especially those who depend on monthly salaries. All employees like me, let's meet for a support group. We another comment. We have another one from Wycliffe Oduor, watching from Child's Space Organization. Thank you so much, Wycliffe, for that. There is also another comment. Another person is saying they are tuned in from, I don't know where that is. Forgive me. Yes. Is it Eco K? All right. We also have Harriet Mpenzi watching from Upper Kabete, Nairobi. Thank you so much for joining this conversation. Rosemary tuned in from Mukurweni. Thank you for joining this conversation today, and we'll continue talking about more comments as they come in. If you have any question, please feel free to tag us. Our panelists here will come back and answer some of those comments, and you can tag them as well if you'd like. At the end of this conversation, we'll know more on how to reach out to them. We are running out of time. We just have 8 more minutes to end this conversation. I want to ask my panelists today, what is your take home message in regards to issues to do with self care and basically mental health? What's your take home message today? David? Actually, before we go to the take home message, just allow me to ask you both, all of you, is there something that you would have wanted us to touch on so that we don't close this conversation without somebody probably expressing something that they thought would be a great addition to this conversation today? So let's start with you, David. Is there something that you feel we should have touched on today?
Oh, yes, thank you. I would also like to talk about the self-care importance in aspect of the recovery in an individual probably going through mental health condition, or and for self-care help in fostering resilience, and they have a lot of self-care research suggests that self-care promotes positive health outcomes. So I would suggest that we really emphasize on self-care for people in recovery, because it also helps to maintain or to prevent reoccurrence of a condition. So I think that self-care also is very vital in recovery, because when you're in recovery, you are more of going through a profound transformational process, and and it is largely centered on self-care. So it is very vital to remember that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you, David, for bringing that into our attention. And just remember that resilience is the ability to bounce back from adversity. Yeah. And one of the only ways to be able to build your capacity in terms of, resilience, whether it's emotional or physical, is being able to build your wellness toolbox, and that is done by self-care. Absolutely. So I really appreciate you, David, for bringing that here. Is there something else you would have liked us to mention today, Madam Wanjiko Mwangi?
Thank you, Gadoni. And thank you, David, for adding about recovery. I think one of the things that we need to know when we talk about self care is that self care is not a mitigation thing. You don't do self care because there's a problem, okay? Because now you're ill, because now something has happened, now you're going to do self care. I think the end goal of this conversation and raising the awareness about self care is so that self care can become a part of your daily life. Okay, it becomes a part of what you're always doing to continuously take care of yourself. That way, we don't end up with like we have this big event, this big thing that happened. Now I need to think about self care. If it's continuous, then you're building what David and Gazan, you're calling resilience. You're building your muscles in terms of how you care for yourself. You're building a healthy being and a healthy relationship with other people and with the environment. So you don't wait for, to be triggered or something like that. It's a continuous process. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Wanji. This is fantastic. I love the direction this conversation is taking. I almost feel like it's going higher as we are going to the end of it. We need to rewrite the narrative from the space that we are only going to address issues because now it's become a billboard. Yeah, that's when you either want to go for therapy or that's when you want to go do self care or even pray, just like we did when we are children, only when there's a problem. But self awareness actually calls for having those intentional reflections, looking at your journeys, reviewing your days, your weeks, all those facets. How are your emotions physically? What are you doing? Are you being consistent in this? And I absolutely love what Wanchiko has said, that self care is not like to mitigate issues. It's something that we need to incorporate in our today daily routine. Lucy, is there something that you feel we need to mention before we come to the end of the conversation today?
Okay, thank you, Madam Gadoni. I would like to say that self-care it's not a competition. It's not a practice that we should be competing with each other, like on who is doing self-care much better than the other. And also, it is better for one to choose the best form of self-care because some people might not be in a position like to see a therapist like their form of taking care of themselves. So they can choose an alternative, eating healthy, meditation, journaling, and all that. So self care, let it not be a competition, but like Madam Onjiko has said, let it be like doing it on a daily basis and finding the best self care to practice. Thank you.
Thank you, absolutely, Lucy, for that. I do appreciate your comments and your sentiments. If you get some time, whether you're watching this conversation right now or actually we will tag it. There is a self care wheel or the wellness wheel, and when you look at that wellness wheel, it has a lot of ideas. Basically, for example, physical, these are the things that you can do. Social, these are the things that you can do. But as Lucy has said, this is not a competition between you and another person. It's just about being accountable for yourself and taking responsibility for yourself, and also being able to identify what works for you. Yeah, so whereas for another person, walking is what would work for their physical self-care, another person needs more structure. Probably they need to be in a gym with a coach, being given commands, do this and do this. So what is it that works for you? Probably another person just needs to dance it out. Yeah, in their own space. At the end of the day, identify what really works for me, what does it for me, and that will help in your journey of consistency. We are winding this conversation, and Eunice, one of the questions that I wanted my panelists to look into is there something else that we should have addressed, or we have left out as talking about self-care, and you can tell us about it.
Thank you, Gadoni. I would also like to add that self care is learning to take a break when you feel like you cannot take it anymore. Like you should give yourself a chance um, to take a break from everything that's going on in your life so that you can reflect and figure out what you should do next. Because you find that sometimes we engage ourselves with too much activity, too much activities that are going on in our life, and we forget that we need that break so that we can reflect on what we are doing and what we should do in daily activities. The other thing I would say is that self care plays a very big role in our mental health. As far as you, there are someone who has been suffering from a mental health illness, you find that they need that time to take actions that they can learn how to appreciate for themselves, do things that affect them positively in their life, and this really bring out reduces the anxiety that they may be going through as people who are undergoing mental illnesses, and also reduce the depressive symptoms which may be reflected during the whole process of treatment and illness. So self-care divert them to things that they should impact them positively. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz, for that. I'm absolutely so glad that you brought up the issue of let me allow me to call it like guilt in taking a rest, and I don't know whether it's just in my community or it's us as an African people. You'll find that somebody is taking leave, and then you're asking them over their leave day, what are they doing? Ndio wameenda na lori pahali kwa shamba. Your Saturdays when you're supposed to be resting, those are the days that you're doing the general cleaning. You've been washing from morning till evening. Yeah, and I think it's kind of embedded in our culture. So we actually do not really we don't know how to take rest. Yeah, and it's not a good thing. Yeah, because like you heard from my very able panelists that burnout becomes imminent at some point, and you've also had the relationship between burnout and mental health as well, poor mental health. um, from Eunice. So self-care is actually very important. It's not just leisure. It's something that should be part of our priority. For lack of better words, it's a basic need. So the same way you're going to factor in food, clothing, shelter, self-care should also be part and parcel of that. It's already 4 o'clock. We've been doing this for the past 1 hour, and I'm so happy to have had this conversation today. But I'm going to allow my panelists, starting with Lucy Minor. What's your take-home message today, and how can people be able to reach you? Welcome, Lucy.
Okay, thank you. I would like to say, let people practice self-care with fun. Let self-care be fun. You don't practice it with pressure or anxiety or with stress. Just practice it and let it be fun, and it will be an awesome experience. Thank you.
How can people reach you, Lucy?
On Twitter, people can reach me at underscore Lucifrica, and even on Instagram and TikTok underscore Lucifrica. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Lucy, for that. Eunice, how can people reach you, and that what's your take-home message today?
Um, my take-home message on today's topic on self-care is that when you choose proper self-care, you choose good mental health. And also, by practicing self-care, it helps you have a good mental health too. Thank you.
Thank you, Eunice, for that. How can people reach you? Please unmute.
I'm a nurse at Chiromo Hospital Group, and my is Wamboi Kiama, at Wamboi Kiama. Thank you.
Etwamboy Kiama. David, thank you, Eunice, for that. David, what's your take home message today, and how can people be able to reach you?
Thank you so much, Gadoni. And my take home is that the goal of self care is basically to take steps each day to make sure that you are getting what you need. Uh, so, self care, as one of my colleague have alluded, is that it is not a one size fit all strategy. What probably what can work for me will not work for you. So you just need to assess your situation and then customize the self care that you need. So, and you just need to take the retro action, the small actions that can really help. You don't need necessarily to like plan for a big event for self-care. There are so many things that around you that can help you to do the self-care. So and it should be fun because life is a gift, so it should be fun also. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for that. And last but not least, sorry, David, where can people reach you? How can people reach you?
Okay, on Twitter, sorry, on Twitter at David Mushia, and also on Facebook, David Mushia. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Last but not least, we have Wanjiko.
Thank you so
What?
much, Kadoni, and yeah, and everybody on the panel. I think for me, what I'd say about self care is that it's a continuous journey, something that David has alluded to. And a very important thing about self care for me is that self care happens in community. Self care, yes, is about you as an individual, but it happens in community. You cannot be able to take care of yourself in isolation. You need to take care of yourself together with other people because we help each other. Self-care is good for you. It's a good thing. And although sometimes self-care can be like you feel it's tedious, it's worth every effort that you put in it, because everything you put into it, it gives back to you. When you take care of yourself, your body takes care of you. When you take care of your mind takes care of you. When you take care of your spirit takes care of you. When you take care of your social community, they'll take care of you. So when you take care of your emotions, they'll take care of you. It's a give and take. What you give, you get back. So I would say that we be intentional, and we put in the steps and the work that is needed in self-care. You can find me on Twitter, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and all that. On Twitter, you can find me at Wanjiko_Joyce M. And then it will lead you to all the other stuff that I do, the integrated living practice that I run, my blog, and all the other things that I'm involved in. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Wanjiko. It's truly, truly been an honor to be your moderator and your host today. I have learned and just reminded myself of so many things where self care is concerned. And I'm truly, truly happy to have had such brilliant people in this conversation today. And just to remind you some of the few things that have been said today, that self care should be fun. I mean, never that serious. It's not work. You're not toiling. Yeah. So let it be something that is fun so that you're likely to indulge in it again and again. Choose self care. I like that you just said choose self care, choose good mental health. Like as simple as that. Yeah. And we also had take take small steps, just each steps every day, just to encourage you to continue doing that. And we also heard from David that life is a gift. Yeah, life is a gift, and absolutely we need to take care of that precious gift that we have been given. And last but not least, no man is an island. You don't recover in isolation. You don't thrive in isolation. So self care happens not just to us, but also within the community. Because if we are well, then we are able to impact the people around us, the spaces around us in a positive way, and vice versa. My name is Gadhoni Bogwa. I am a clinical psychologist by profession, 10 years now, and a wellness therapist. And if you're out there and you're wondering who to talk to, Chiromo Hospital Group has a toll-free line that is displayed down there, 0800 220 0000. Feel free to call and talk to a psychologist on the other end. We have also just recently opened the newest branch, baby, in Nyali, Chiromo Hospital Group Nyali branch. So if you're joining this conversation all the way kutoka Pwani, there is also sufficient dignified help that you can be able to receive. Here in Nairobi, we have 4 branches, 2 in Lavington, 2 in Westlands. Feel free. As we said today, let's move away from the narrative where we are only going to deal with problems. Yeah, we are intentionally choosing to take care of ourselves just for the psychosocial issues that we go through every day. And allow me to end this conversation by telling you about one of my favorite quotes, which is by Lala Della. And the quote says that self-care is how you take your power back. That quote was said by Lala Della. Self-care is how you take your power back. Thank you so much, and tufunguke.